Hey, welcome to Decaf, a familiar face and a guest
Not too familiar.
not too familiar. Justin, thanks for hopping on here with me today. This is fun.
It's nice to occasionally be invited.
Hey, I like it when you and I do this together because you don't insult me as much as Mark does. Now, guys, don't get off thinking that he's like the best boss ever and is so kind to me all the time because he roasts me every chance that he gets via text. But in the public eye, he's pretty nice. So I'll take it when I
Got to
can
keep
get it.
up appearances,
Yeah,
right?
seriously, I'll take it when I can get it. Justin, actually, though, I will hat tip him because he sent me an article earlier this week that's going to be the first thing we talk about today, which is the very cool thing. And you, Justin, as the boomer, as I like to call you, boomer in your mindset, this is this whole innovation and autonomous society thing. I'm glad that you think it's cool and not get off my lawn. Amazon is testing out these delivery bots in Franklin, and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It is really cool. And by the way, you didn't ask me like you always ask Mark.
Oh
What do
yeah,
you,
what are you drinking?
like a typical millennial, I'm drinking my cold brew this morning. Not iced coffee, actually cold brew. There's a difference.
I'm gonna be honest. When you held it up before we started, I thought it was like a
That is a
soft.
Jack and Coke.
Well, wouldn't put it past you, but I thought it might be like a soft drink, like you were going full boomer, like drinking your caffeine-free Diet Coke. But
Nope.
you're drinking cold brew.
Cold brew.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Um, so
Back to the subject at hand.
But that brings up a good point. So is this bot that Amazon is using, is it going to deliver like food? Like could it deliver cold brew to Louisiana Avenue?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the kind of goal, is that unlike a human that would bring food to your door, this bot would, and they're fairly small right now. I mean, it's a small robot like R2D2. Um, and so it like rolls up and it'll deliver food, it'll deliver groceries, deliver your prescriptions, whatever. And so they're testing these in Franklin. I think only two places in America that they're testing. I believe Atlanta, or like around Atlanta area, and in Franklin, Tennessee, of all places. But it's really cool. So it's, to try to get an experience with a small suburban type town, and to see if they can make this work. And they don't go fast. They like go up and down the sidewalk. They only go, I think, 11 miles an hour or something, but they know how to migrate around you. So you don't have to like sidestep it. It actually stays out of your way. And I think it's a fascinating development that could really impact a lot of people's lives in a positive way.
I love it so much. It really is like the cutest thing I've ever seen. It's like,
It's pretty
you
cool.
remember those little things they used to sell at Lowe's? You could keep your garden equipment in, you could roll it out to the garden and like open
Mhm.
it up and you'd have all your little stuff. It looks like that, but a little more high tech, a little more fancy out of the 90s. I absolutely love it. And I hope that people don't raise hell and get all mad that something's on the sidewalks like they did about scooters. I don't know.
It's
Am
a
I
little
just
different than scooters. I mean, yeah, there's NIMBYism that'll happen. Like, I don't want it, that want this. And then with any innovation, you have that knee-jerk reaction that this is bad. But I always, when people complained about the scooters, and now when people are going to complain about the Amazon delivery bots, I always point them back to this little article that I found online from I think it was the 1800s, that was decrying this terrible, dangerous new invention called the bicycle, and how scary and dangerous it was that we will allow people to ride these things. And so even the bike had, its detractors early on. And so, yeah, any innovation comes with risk, but this is something that people don't ride. It's not like a scooter. There's not going to be that type of danger. And it's providing a service. I mean, if people have, especially during the age of COVID, when they need their prescriptions and food and groceries delivered to them, this expands those opportunities, perhaps in places that otherwise wouldn't have it. It reduces traffic because
Mhm.
you're not having a physical car
Yes.
bring that to you. For environmentalists, it's much greener than a van or a UPS truck. And so,
Absolutely.
look, I mean, there are a lot of upsides to innovations like this. And I think it's a pretty cool one to watch.
I love it. I'm like, if you can't tell, I'm like borderline giddy about this. I think it's so cool. I think that self-driving cars are cool. I think these little delivery robots are cool. I just can't wait to see what people come up with next, because I just think that innovation is so cool. And I'm
Well,
sure.
to tie this to policy, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
it's
I'll
right.
forget it, of course, that the reason that this is happening in Franklin is because the state legislature passed a law that
Yes.
this year that will allow this type of testing like we have with autonomous vehicles and other things. And so if we want to be on the forefront of innovation, let's pass reforms that allow for these types of things while still protecting the safety of citizens, which this does. And so, look, I mean, I think one of the reasons that Amazon is bringing this to Franklin is because we've been forethought, or you have that foresight as a state. So that's pretty cool too.
I love it. That's brilliant. That's so great. I love my home state of Alabama, but they're very much stuck
Mm.
in the
Do
like.
they have cars yet?
No, horse and buggy,
Horse
Justin.
and
You wouldn't
buggy.
believe it.
Okay. Okay.
You wouldn't believe it. But they don't do things like this, and that's why I love living in Tennessee, and I love being on the Beacon team, because we push these innovative things, and we want to see more innovation that makes people's lives easier. What's the point if we're not making people's lives easier? Then what's the point? So
That's right.
this is very cool, and I love it. I'm sure we will hear about it a lot on Twitter. Maybe the NIMBYs will come out of the woodwork and bash us. But Twitter is actually cracking down right now, bringing us to our second topic. Twitter is deciding to censor some folks. Yesterday, the news came out, and I don't want to get down the QAnon rabbit hole because I can and I will. Justin makes fun of me because I love a good conspiracy theory. I love them. I don't want to get down that, but I do want to talk about how Twitter said yesterday that they are banning QAnon follower users. QAnon is this, it's the deep state conspiracy theory that came out, I guess, in 2016, and it's really
Don't
taken.
ask me.
Yeah,
I know it has something to do with pizza and
right.
pedophiles, I think.
Yes,
Like,
correct.
that's the extent of what I know about QAnon.
Stay out of it because you will spiral much like I have done. But Twitter is banning any user that affiliates themselves with QAnon. And when I saw that, Joe in our office actually sent me the tweet from Twitter support that said they were doing that, and I was curious. And so I know some of the users. I don't follow them, but I know kind of who they are. I started looking them up, and their accounts have been banned. And so it raises an interesting point that people say, well, you're stifling my free speech. And I know Justin has some ideas on that. So Justin, what would you say to someone who says, well, they're stifling free speech by doing this, and that's our right?
Yeah, so you definitely have free speech rights in this country, but against government, not against private
Against
entities.
Twitter.
Your First Amendment rights apply to government. And so it is frustrating as sort of as a lawyer and someone who believes so devoutly in our Constitution that sometimes is misinterpreted to apply to entities that it doesn't. That said, that doesn't make censorship a positive thing, right? And when you're picking and choosing who can have a voice on your platforms, I think there's a valid argument that that's problematic. It's not unconstitutional, but it is bad from just from a censorship and just an exchange of ideas standpoint. Again, I know very little about what QAnon is, but I know that there are other dangerous voices on Twitter. I see them every day. And if Twitter is going to ban dangerous voices, maybe there will be no Twitter. So I
Right.
just wonder, like, is Twitter jumping the shark here by continuing down this rabbit hole of trying to dictate what is and is not allowed speech that could hopefully lead to other platforms that are better and have more integrity than Twitter, because I have very strong thoughts about Twitter. To
Justin
begin with.
hates Twitter. That's one thing that I love about kind of how we think at Beacon, is thinking that two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that you should have free speech and the government should uphold free speech, but Twitter is not government. But also at the same time, Twitter should not censor people or censor everyone. Like, both of those things can be true. Twitter's not breaking any laws, but at the same time, they're not doing right. Justin and I are both already on Parler, so you should follow us. We're really boring on Parler. We
I
haven't
don't
really.
remember my username,
I don't
but
remember either. I think it's like Beacon CEO or something. And
oh,
my
it is. That's right. You got me. Like, that's somebody. You're Mark one told me I should do Beacon CEO. Make it a little more like this is my beacon opinion, not my personal opinion.
And then mine is Taylor Dawson because I have a lot of hot takes that I'm going to put on there just as
Justin
Taylor.
Owen was taken, so unfortunately I couldn't be
Well,
myself.
maybe it's that like 14-year-old Justin Owen that always pops up when we Google search you. He's like very active on social media or something. There's literally like a high school kid named Justin Owen. That's not him, believe it or not. He's
Some
older.
say I look 14.
I know he's older than 14. Well, I think that it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in coming weeks of if they choose to ban other, quote, dangerous voices. Like, Antifa tweets out controversial things. Are you going to ban them? Everyone's tweeting controversial things. So,
Right.
like, who's next?
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about innovation, as we discussed
Mm-hmm.
in a previous segment, that if people don't like it, they'll vote with their feet like they do in elections, or vote with their tweet in this case, and say, I'm going to quit Twitter, or I'm going to make my voice heard and then go over to Parler, or whatever other platform exists, because Twitter's not the first, and it's certainly not going to be the last platform for people to voice their opinion. And that's a good thing. Having the choice to go elsewhere is a fundamental value.
Yes, it is. And Justin and I actually, this is off topic from what we were going to talk about, but Justin and I went yesterday and got our hair cut by our plaintiff in our home business case.
How about it? Yeah.
Look at us. And while we were there, we have two plaintiffs in our home business case. We know that home businesses are now allowed in Nashville, so we went to her home, got our hair cut. Our other plaintiff is a home studio owner, so now we just need to cut a record with him. And I think that our title track, I'd say a rap album, and our title track should be something along the lines of vote with your feet or vote with your tweet. I don't know, Justin. I don't know. I don't know if that's allowed.
I can bust a rhyme, so
I can. You just gotta drop the beat or something, and I'll do this. Yeah. Anyway,
this will be officially the worst album in American history, not
so
just rap album. It will be the worst album in history.
Yeah.
But you got to be good at something, right? First place is great.
We'll be
doesn't
the
matter what first
best
place
of the worst.
is.
Yes. The whole freedom movement will disown us if we do that. We need to be careful. So next topic, and I don't know how to transition into this from rap album, but we were kind of as a group yesterday watching a press conference about the new COVID rules in Nashville, and the mayor was saying, Mark, Stephanie, Justin, and I were all chatting about it as it was going on, and the mayor was saying that restaurants are going to be closed after 10 p.m. because apparently Corona only spreads after 10 p.m.
Like a vampire, it only comes out at night.
And we were talking about just how absurd this is, which goes back to Justin's whole point that we made at the beginning of this in March. Corona doesn't care if you're an essential employee or a non-essential employee. It doesn't care if your business is a bar or a restaurant or a retail store. It doesn't care if you're trying on clothes or trying them on in the dressing room. All of these things are kind of ridiculous. It's getting to the point where there's just no consistency.
Well, that's the problem. And that was the problem we talked about with, designating essential versus non-essential, because in fact, you create this false sense of security for people that it's safer to go into a crowded grocery store than it is to go into an empty bookstore. And that's just not true. And so if our policies aren't based off true public health and safety, then they're not going to have the intended result, A. And they're also potentially going to create a false sense of security that it's okay to go day drink at a restaurant, because as long as I'm done by 10 p.m., then I'm not going to get the virus, versus, well, I can no longer go after 10 p.m. because that's when I might be drinking and more susceptible to the virus. It's just not sensical. And so, the mayor has been a colossal disappointment in his leadership on this, because he's created such inconsistent rules. We've now gone backwards in Nashville. We went to phase 3, which essentially meant that most businesses could be open at certain capacity. But then we went back to phase 2 when we saw a spike, and it hasn't changed things. That hasn't gone down. It hasn't impacted the cases. It hasn't impacted our hospitalization rate, which is a more important factor than purely the number of cases, which is driven by testing. So all of that aside, when you first move back and forth and create inconsistencies, and then try to punish certain people and certain businesses by changing those phases. We're not in phase 2, we're in modified phase 2. So that means all of these other rules and regulations have been thrown on to the situation that are confusing to understand and frankly are nonsensical. What happens in those situations is that people just give up and start ignoring you.
Yes.
And so if you don't have the leadership to say, this is why we're doing it and why it matters, and tie it to the result, and then convince people that it's the right thing to do to follow the rules, then you're never going to get this under control through those types of rules and regulations. And so it's unfortunate because there are so many businesses and people who are devastated by the inconsistent and irrational rules that our city is putting on them.
I got really emotional.
Rant over.
No, I love that rant because I got really emotional yesterday actually watching the owner of that Full Throttle Bar and Grill being shut down by the health inspector. And he was like, are you going to pay my mortgage?
Yeah.
Like, someone has to help me here. And he was being shut down by the health inspector. And it broke my heart because he, according to him, he did everything that was asked of him and he was shut down, and he's distraught because he needs money to pay his mortgage. And I get it. I get it.
We're sorry if you hear Henry barking. Apparently we're getting a delivery or something. But so this is part of the problem, is that you're punishing innocent people and businesses who are following the rules, who are doing their part, by imposing additional, more stringent regulations on them that make it harder for them to run their businesses, while essentially allowing businesses that are flouting the laws to continue to do so. I mean, there's really been no effort to enforce the rules on the rule breakers, but they're forcing it on everybody else. And it's just extremely inconsistent, and it's causing more problems than it's solving. And again, it's very disappointing to see the lack of leadership in this city right now.
Well, business owners, if you're watching this or listening to this and you're a business owner, we're with you, and we feel for you, because this is a really hard time, and our whole society is based on the fact that you can run a business and do what you want to do and have the freedom to do that carefully, of course, during this time. But we're with you, and we feel for you. Last topic of the day also has to do with shutting down, but hopefully not forever. Justin and I were talking yesterday about, is it the Oakland A's that were doing this?
Yeah, so the Oakland A's, it's going to be a weird season for all sports because there aren't going to be fans in the stands largely. And so, having empty stadiums is demoralizing to players, and it's just weird for fans to see on TV. It doesn't make for good TV. So what the A's have done is said, if you send us your picture and pay, I don't remember how much it is, it's not a tremendous amount of money, they'll create a cardboard cutout of you and put you in a seat. And if the ball, like a foul ball or a home run, hits your face, essentially, they'll mail you the ball, which is really cool. Like, that's like, I wish the Braves were doing this, because we talked about it. We'd get seats together. We get season tickets together.
I would get season tickets with you guys, and our little cardboard cutouts would be all sitting next to each other. That would be so much fun. I think it is. So Justin and I are both Braves fans. I'm an Alabama fan. He's a UT fan. We go through this all the time. But we're sports fans. Mark is a Jazz fan, whatever. We're not really basketball people, but we are baseball people and we're football people. And I think, I would love a cardboard cutout of myself at Bryant-Denny Stadium or at the new SunTrust Park. I would love that. But I would also, and this is something that Justin and I think might disagree on, is I love sports more than I care about getting corona. So if they were to let me in a stadium, I would go. And I know that that's a hot take, but I would go.
That's what, like, I'm willing to take certain risks. I'm being cautious, and when I go out, I wear my mask, and I'm just keeping social distancing and that kind of thing. I don't know about being in a crowd. Like, if they said you pay double in order to get, we're only going to let half the people in so that you could still kind of sit farther apart from people, I would definitely do it. But large crowds, particularly in the South,
that's true.
I don't know. I think I'd at least have to wait a little bit longer. Now, if I could get a vaccine where I knew that it was safe and the trial runs are good and all of that, and the vaccine comes out and that way I can travel unencumbered or go to sports stadiums unencumbered, I would definitely do it because I'm severely missing travel and I'm severely missing sports. But I wouldn't go sit like, shoulder to
Right.
shoulder with 100, in the case of, UT, well over 100,000 people right now. So maybe I would this fall. Kind of
Right.
depends on how things shake out. But I'd be a little more cautious than you right now. I'm not like, I'm willing to get the COVID in order to see a sports team play in person.
Well,
I'm not.
kind of am. I mean, okay, so I'm for the vaccine. My mom works for AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca and Oxford are really
Yeah.
close to the vaccine. It's been really fun to see. I'm for it. I will, if it happens, I will get it. Nothing about that. But I'm kind of at this point, like, I don't want to get corona. I don't want to spread it. I am being very, very careful, but I kind of like, I don't know. I'm just like, I want things to be back to normal, and I want to watch the Tide roll, and I want to do the Braves chop, and I want to eat Dippin' Dots out of a little Braves hat. I got the itch, and I just need it.
Well, at least we can see it on TV starting Friday. So
Yes.
we're getting close
And
to
I
having.
think Stephanie said it was weird. Stephanie was watching the other day. She said it was weirdly quiet. I think I might just have to like mute it and turn on music in the background so it feels like maybe a little normal. I don't know what to do, but
Pump your own crowd noise and find a YouTube
yeah,
crowd noise
yeah.
like video or something. That's funny.
At least it's kind of happening. So we can be thankful for that. Things are sort of getting back to normal. And maybe we can get some cardboard heads next to each other at a Braves game. That would be sick.
I'm all for it.
That would be awesome. Well, Justin, any final thoughts for today's decaf?
I think I have ranted enough, and I'm
I love
almost finished with my cold brew. So this was a great episode.
Yeah, this was fun. We'll do it again. You're much nicer to me than Marcus, so we'll do it again. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show with me, and we'll see you guys next week.